Hello guys, and welcome to my build video for Ghost. This is an old Templar build that I was playing way back in 1.6, and with the Summerset patch, honestly, it's as strong as it was back when I used to play it. So I'm so excited to show this build to you guys. It is a very fast, very high-paced, medium armor burst Templar build that uses Mistform, and it is exciting. It plays almost like a Nightblade. Let's jump into the build. So this is Ghost, guys. Let's take a look at this stat page. So starting out here, we are a Nord Templar. Now, I'm Nord because this is the race I had chosen for my Templar a long time ago when I had made this character, and I just never wanted to race change it. I think for this particular build, Nord is a really good choice. The 6% damage reduction that Nord gives can be super useful for keeping you more tanky in your Mistform especially. That being said, though, if you want to go for higher damage alternatives, I think that Orc is also an excellent choice. Redguard is also a great choice if you want to go for the damage sustain mix on this build as well. And of course you can go Bosmer or Khajiit. Not ideal for this spec, but they still have some good passives for it too. So taking a look at our stat page here, you can see that we have just about 12.5k Magicka, 20k HP, and just under 30k stamina. So the stat pool here does not look super huge, but that is fine. 20k HP is a little bit on the low side, but this is a very fast-paced medium armor build, and your kind of goal in this build is to not get hit, as opposed to like take damage and try to heal it away. You're just supposed to avoid the incoming damage, and that's really how you play effectively, I think, especially this patch with medium armor thanks to the Swifty traits. So the 20k health I think is totally okay here. You might get bursted by some guys if you get hit by like 2 or 3 guys at the same time with really heavy damage. They would probably one-shot you, but the whole point of this build, like I said, is to avoid that huge incoming burst in the first place. Our stamina is only at 30k. We didn't have a ton of max stam on this build. If you pick Redguard, you'll have a little bit more max stam, but 30k is right about where you want to be sitting once you finish putting this together. For the recoveries, we've got 1300 Magicka recovery, and on the bow bar, a whopping 2066 stamina recovery. So I'm actually going to drink the potion real quick, and we'll buff up to 2355 stamina recovery on the bow bar. We have lots of recovery on this build, a lot more recovery than I have previously run on Ghost iterations, and the reason that I put so much recovery on this one is because I wanted this build to be reflexive, fast-paced, and I didn't want to just run out of resources when you get to play this playstyle. So this is, I think, a great amount of recovery because with this amount we can continue to play that very fast playstyle with lots of roll dodging, lots of blocking enemy attacks, and lots of avoiding damage, and still maintain a great amount of physical burst as well. So something to note is that we do have better regen on the bow bar. We'll get into that once we take a look at our skills and gear. But the bow bar is your better regen bar, of course, because we have Mistform on it. The fact that we have Mistform here means that we're going to be spending a lot of time on this bar defending ourselves. So having the extra regen on this bar is super useful, I think. So taking a look at the weapon damage, when we buff up on the front bar, we're sitting at just about 4k weapon damage on the front bar. Now we are running 5-piece Automaton as well, and we do have an infused bow, so fully buffed up, we get to 5.2k weapon damage on this build. So yeah, we hit pretty friggin' hard. And we also have Slimecraw on, so that's why this offensive page here may look a little bit lower than what you're normally going to see from a Stamina Templar, but we've got a lot of big buffs going into our damage as well as the invisible Automaton buffs, so we've got a lot of weapon damage on our two-hand bar here. Our weapon crit on our Greatsword bar is coming in at just under 50%, which is an awesome amount of crit, and then on the bow bar we've got a little bit more coming in at 54%. We do quite a lot of crit damage in this build. This is a pretty great crit build, and the increased crit is also going to be good for your healing, so this is a good amount of crit for us to have here. Our spell resistance and physical resistance are not super awesome. We got buffed spell resistance 21k, that's not so bad. Buffed physical resist at 18k, that is kind of standard for medium armor. And then we've got just under 2k crit resist as well, 1900 here. So these are not super high resists. This is a very fast-paced reflexive build. You're supposed to avoid incoming damage, not just let it hit you. So we don't focus a lot on having high, bulky physical attributes here. For our Mundus Stone, we are running the Warrior. The Warrior is great because it's going to increase our outgoing damage and our outgoing healing. And then for the drink that we're using, we are using the Magicka and Stamina Recovery drink, the Cloud Rest Clarified coffee. This is one of the best sustain drinks in the game. You can't go wrong with this guy. It's going to give you lots of sustain, 500 magicka stamina recovery for 1 hour. Very, very cheap. And you need both recoveries for this build. You need the magicka recovery really bad. Otherwise, you're just going to end up running out of magicka for your mist form and your purges. And the stamina recovery is fantastic because we are in medium armor. And then we do have Minor Berserk as well. This is coming from our Slime Cross set. And then we are also a Stage 4 Vampire. Vampirism is a must-have. This build uses Speedy Mist. Vampirism gives you access to Mist form, so if you're not a vampire, you can't do this build. I guess you could try to replace Mist with maybe Shuffle if you really didn't want to be a vampire, and just take advantage of this snare immunity and your speed. That being said, the amount of damage that you can mitigate using Mist form makes it far the superior option in my personal opinion. So, there you go, guys. Alright, so let's take a look at the gear sets that we're wearing on this build. So to start off, like I had mentioned, we have the 2-piece Slime Craw on. This is here for the weapon crit that it gives us. That's nice. We have quite a bit invested into the crit damage on this build as well. And it also is here for that Minor Berserk, 8% increased outgoing damage. Yeah, this is a really nice buff, just flat 8% damage increase. For a burst build like this is probably the best helm set you can wear. Templar, of course, does not get access to Minor Berserk, so this is going to give us access to that buff also. The next set that we have is a 5-piece Automaton, and we only run this on our Greatsword bar. And the reason we only have it on our Greatsword bar is because our Greatsword bar is kind of our front burst bar. This is a burst-oriented build, so we only really need all the damage on one bar, and then the rest, our back bar, is just going to be for defensive purposes and setting a combo. So Automaton was chosen because it is simply the highest damage dealing set that you can wear on a Templar. Automaton is BIS Templar burst set. Seriously, it is so good for Templar. It can be kind of tricky to farm. I mean, you got to do Darkshade for it. It's not hard to farm, it just is annoying because you got to be looking for that Greatsword drop, and that can take some time. That being said, though, it's not a hard dungeon to do, so this is a set that anybody can easily get their hands on as well. Something to mention about Automaton is that it does not increase the amount of healing that you do. This is only a damage increasing set. The next set that we have is Bone Pirate. Now, this is something that I've always kind of wanted to fit onto my Ghost build, but I've never been able to because of the issue of running 2H and Bow, and I've never been able to run the full 5-piece Bone Pirate and be able to really run 2H and Bow because I didn't have the Master weapons or the Maelstrom weapons. So in this Summerset patch, now that a 2H and a Bow now count as 2 set pieces towards their set, we can finally run a 5-piece Bone Pirate in the gear here, so it's not on swap, and we have it on at all times. Bone Pirate is going to be fantastic for 2 reasons. Number 1, it's going to give us that maximum stamina that this build is dearly missing. We don't have a lot of max stam on it, and it also gives us a ton of stamina recovery as well to go with the drink. So this is a fantastic set, I think, for medium armor builds in general for PvP. And then finally, the last thing that we're using on this build is a Senshei bow on the back bar. Yes, that's right, we have a singular Senshei's bow on the back bar, and this is just to give us that bonus to stamina recovery. That is why we have a little bit more recovery on our bow bar than we do on the Greatsword bar. And of course, the reason that we've made this our recovery bar is because we have Mist form here, and this is just going to play into that stamina recovery while we're in our Mist form. So yeah, that's why we've got the Senshei, and honestly, I really like back-barring it for the regen. I think it's been very valuable in PvP. I've really noticed that it helps with my sustain, because I do spend a lot of time on my bow bar outside of the quick burst combos that I'll normally do on this build. So if you have a master bow, that is ideally, I think, what people would want to run here in this open bow slot. You could use it, and the master bow is ultimately going to give you the highest amount of burst on this build. That being said, though, the Senshei 1-piece is totally fine, or just any bow that has the 2-piece stamina recovery here. Any of them work, because honestly, this works really well for the build. It synergizes really well with Mist, and it gives you a great alternative if you don't feel like you want to go out and farm that master bow for this spec. So for the traits on the weapons, guys, we have gone with Infused on the bow. This is important to buff our outgoing weapon damage, of course, and having it infused is going to reduce the cooldown on this, allowing us to keep this enchant buff up almost 100% of the time, as long as we're actively swapping to our back bar while in combat. On the front bar, we have gone with the Nirnhoned Greatsword. Nirnhoned, of course, is one of my favorite traits for front bar in PvP, because it's going to increase your outgoing damage and healing. Super fantastic. And then for the traits on the jewelry, we have gone with full Swift traits. So the full Swift traits, I think, are an absolute must-have for this build in PvP. The speed that it gives you is so invaluable. It's really where the survivability of this build comes from, is from the speed. The fact that you're just faster than most things in Cyrodiil is going to mean that you won't have to take fights where you're severely outnumbered all the time, and you'll be able to just pull back and make it a 1v1, a 1-on-2, and just control the battle using your speed. And the Swift traits are so important for that. Now, something to mention about the Swift is it is going to be tricky to get at the beginning of the Summerset patch, especially for you poor console guys. The best way I found to do it was to eventually get the research yourself, and you're gonna have to transmute these. If you don't transmute these to Swift, there's no other way to get Swift Bone Pirate jewelry, and Bone Pirate, like Automaton, is a dungeon set, so this is the only way to do it. But getting your Swift research is not super expensive unless you get it right away. The trait to make the Swift itself is Gilding Wax, and it only costs 20 writ vouchers, so it's actually easy to get someone to make you Swift to research yourself if you have access to all the materials for it and can find someone who, of course, already knows the Swift trait. But that being said, though, this is absolutely fantastic. Must have for this build. You can play this build without Swift, but it will not be as good. You need the Swift. I would say at least 2 out of 3 Swift to make this build effective. 3 out of 3 is where you're going to be absolutely enjoying and loving this spec. For the enchants on here, we have gone with full weapon damage enchants. That, of course, is going to bulk all our outgoing damage and healing. And then for the gear, guys, we have gone with 5 pieces of well-fitted and 2 pieces of impenetrable. Now, this is kind of up to you guys. I feel like the more you play this build, the faster and more reflexive you get, the more well-fitted you want to run, and the less impenetrable you want to run, because ultimately you're dodging and mitigating more damage just by not taking it in the first place than impen would be saving you by making that damage not crit. So it's kind of up to you guys what you want to do here. I would highly recommend 5 well-fitted, 2 impen. If you really feel like that might be too squishy for you, you can drop 1 piece well-fitted for more impen, but don't be tempted to go full impen. Honestly, the roll dodge cost reduction that it gives you and the sprint cost reduction on well-fitted is so worthwhile. Now, something I did want to mention about the traits is that we do actually do a lot of blocking on this build, but you don't want to go for the block traits here because you're honestly just going to get negative returns on it compared to if we just invest into blocking through our CP tree instead. For the enchants on the gear, you want to go with full tri-stat Hacky Joes. This is becoming, I think, kind of a standard for PvP builds and ESO is to tri-stat everything on a PvP build, unless you're going for like a Max Magicka spec. And I know they're kind of expensive, but honestly, if you want to run a really good PvP build, they're kind of a must-have. The max HP that it gives and the max of the opposite stat pool that it gives just allows you to have more sustain and take a longer fight than you would normally if you didn't, at the cost of very little damage. So I think that the tri-stat is totally worth it. If you cannot afford the tri-stat glyphs, you can just do the big pieces then and leave the little ones as max stamina. As you can see here, poor Jack is missing 1 tri-stat as well. Alright guys, so let's take a look at the skills that we're using on this build. So if you guys have seen Ghost before, this will look very familiar to you. And if you have not seen this build before, this will look like a very foreign stamina Templar kit that you would say, how does that really work? I don't understand it. But don't worry, we've provided lots of gameplay footage. This kit makes perfect sense if you watch the footage, see the build in action, see it for yourself, and you'll be like, yeah, that works really well. But anyway, let's take a look at this kit. The first ability that we have is Executioner. This is going to be our standard finisher move. This is our Execute. We're gonna finish off our kills on people below 50% health with this move. It deals exponentially more damage as their health begins to drop, and it's super cheap. You can go with the AoE morph if you want, but this is a single target build, and I think Executioner is the better choice because it will deal more damage. Okay, so the next ability that we have is Critical Rush, and I've buffed up here so you guys can see that tooltip. Yes, that's right, we are using Critical Rush again. Zenimax recently nerfed the crap out of Critical Rush before the Summerset patch, so the patch prior to this, and they took its damage down by about 40%. Well, this patch, they actually gave Templar easy access to the Minor Force buff, so we get 10% of that damage back there, and then finally we do have that slow power creep to play into effect. But anyway, guys, we are using Crit Rush again because I can actually do some serious damage with it. I hit a 9k Crit Rush on a player with this build in this patch, and I honestly haven't been able to hit like a 9k or higher crit rush for some time, so I was really, really pleased to see that against the player. So crit rush will deal exponentially more damage as you are further away from the target, and it always results in a critical strike. So this is going to be one of your meaty gap closer / damage dealing abilities. This is the hardest hitting gap closer in the game, and on this build we intend to make it hit hard. On the next skill, we have Race Against Time. Now, this is a new Psijic ultimate ability that we've actually added to this build through the Psijic order skills, and it's really great. The Psijic order skills were added in the Summerset patch, and to be perfectly honest, they kind of complete the buffs that some classes were missing, especially getting easy access to Minor Force and Major Expedition through Race Against Time. I mean, this is a buff that DK and Templar sorely needed. Even Nightblade likes that Minor Force, so there you go. I absolutely loved some of the new abilities that they added with the Psijic Order skill line, and this is the one that we've chosen for that Minor Force buff. 10% more critical damage. That's going to make our crit rush hit harder, and all of our other abilities that crit are going to hit harder as well. And this also gives us access to a Major Expedition. Now, we have lots of sources of Major Expedition on this build, which is great. It's going to keep us very mobile. But the second kind of thing that this does for your sprint is reduce the cost of it by 50% for the 3 seconds that you get that Major Expedition. So this is actually really sweet because if you're wearing the Well-Fitted, you can sprint pretty much like at almost no cost. I mean, the drain is really slow, and as you can see here, my stamina is just very slowly going down, and I can just keep casting Race Against Time, keeping that sprint cost down, and this allows you to just sprint really fast for a long period of time, which is kind of cool because it's very resource non-intensive, and usually moving around quickly is very resource intensive. So this gives you access to very fast movement speed at very little cost. The next ability that we have is Rally, and we have gone with Rally as the heal over time and the primary heal for this build, and it is also access to Major Brutality for this spec as well. But yeah, Rally is going to be your only heal. And that's kind of the philosophy of this build. Like I had mentioned, we only have Rally as the heal, and that's because this build, you're not supposed to get hit if you can see the attack coming. If you can avoid it, you avoid it, and that's why I don't think we need more than just Rally. Rally paired especially with Extended Ritual and the Restoring Focus healing buff allows you to have a lot of healing power on a Templar. So that's why we've gone with that here. The next ability that we have is Binding Javelin. This is going to be your primary stun for the build. It hits really hard. As you can see, we have almost an 8k tooltip on this 41 meter stun, and it has a 25% chance to proc Burning Light, and our Burning Light tooltip is almost 7k. So yeah, this can deal crazy amounts of damage if you get a Burning Light proc and they both crit. I mean, the Binding Javelin, I've just seen it hit players for like 10 to 15k. It hits so freaking hard. That being said, though, it will not consistently hit that hard, but what it will consistently be is an excellent distance stun, and it knocks your opponent back 8 meters. This synergizes, of course, really well with Crit Rush, which is going to allow us to make a bigger gap between our opponent and then deal more damage when we close that gap into them. Binding Javelin is also important to have on this bar because it gives us access to the Piercing Spear passive, which will increase our critical damage by another 10%, coupling, of course, with the buff that we get from Race Against Time. And then finally, for the ultimate on this build, guys, we have gone with Flawless Dawnbreaker. And Flawless, I think, is the way to go here. I personally love Flawless on this build over Dawnbreaker of Smiting. Dawnbreaker of Smiting is a good ult, don't get me wrong. The stun is really nice, but we have such a good stun from the Javelin, and this, of course, is a single target focus build anyway. We want to make sure that we bulk up all of the other combination damage that we do rather than just have a heavier hitting Dawnbreaker. Also, you probably won't be dropping this ult too terribly often on this build. Our backbar ult is the new Psijic ult, and it is really, really good for survival on this spec, and that is likely the ult that you will be using the most anyway, so this is normally just slotted here for that damage buff that it gives anyway. So we do get the 5% for slotting it here, and we get another 3%, of course, for it being a Fighters Guild skill. This ability itself has a pretty decent tooltip coming in at 15k and the 14k dot, so we can deal quite a nice amount of spike damage with it. If we, of course, took the Smiting morph, we'd be looking at around an 18k tooltip on this bad boy. Okay, so let's check out that bow bar. So starting at the first ability here, we have Poison Injection. This is going to be your primary damage over time ability that you use. If you have a Master Bow, this is how you're going to proc the bonus damage that the Master Bow does as well. But anyway, the way the Poison Injection works is it's going to deal a lot of damage to your target over time, increasing as their health begins to drop. So it's kind of like a double execute coupled with your Executioner. The next ability that we have is Power of the Light. No, it was not Magnum Shot. I'm sorry. We have Power of the Light here because, well, it's actually a really fantastic damage ability for a single target Templar. You put the ability on them, it'll deal the upfront 4.2k physical damage. This ability is completely undodgeable, by the way, so you can use it on a rolling target. So once you have this effect on them, your opponent is also affected by Minor Fracture and Minor Breach, reducing both their physical and spell resist by 1300. So that's just more debuff to put on your opponent there. And then finally, 20% of the damage that you do during the 6 seconds that this ability is on your opponent will be copied as a bonus hit on top. And here you can see the maximum damage is coming in at 17k on the bow bar. And it remains consistent on both bars. And I believe that's because this ability scales only off your maximum stamina value. So don't be too alarmed by the max damage if it looks a little bit on the low side. We have a lower stam pool, and that's why that looks that way. And also, you're almost never going to get this ability to proc for the full amount of damage that it can do. If you can get it to proc for that amount of damage, your target should be dead twice over anyway. So there you go. So regarding this skill, I had the choice really between Power of the Light and the new Psijic skill, the Imbue Weapon ability. Now, I had tried out the Imbue Weapon, going for the Crushing Weapon that gives you the little bit of heal on your light attack as well. And honestly, I think Power of the Light is the better way to go. Crushing Weapon is going to give you that nice burst, and it's a little bit quicker, but Power of the Light is going to deal more consistent damage to your target, and it's honestly harder for an opponent to deal with, because if it's the Imbue Weapon, they can just dodge your light attack, but Power of the Light, they cannot dodge. They have to purge it, otherwise it's going to deal the damage to them. And then finally, if you guys are running the Master Bow, you could always put Repentance here, and Repentance will just make up for the recovery that you lose by running the Master Bow as opposed to the Senshei on the back bar. And of course, you have higher damage on your front bar thanks to running the Master Bow as well. And that's really only if you want to drop this slot. Now, if you guys don't want to run both these offensive skills, you can, but you will not have an easy time taking down tankier targets if you don't have both of these skills to do it. The dot in combination with Power of the Light is really how you can put the pressure on someone who's tankier. If you don't have this, your natural crit rush combo won't really kill people who are going to be on the tanky side. So the next ability that we have is Elusive Mist, and this is really a huge part of this build. A lot of this build is built around this ability, and yeah, this is my favorite vampire skill in the game. This is one of my favorite abilities in the game. I have loved this skill for so long, and I am so glad that Summerset brings back Speedy Mist. So what this ability does, while you're in Mist form, you will take 75% less damage, and you will increase your movement speed by 30% for 4 seconds. And then while you're in Mist form, you are completely immune to all immobilizing and disabling effects, but you cannot be healed and your magicka recovery shut off. So it's kind of like an invincibility cloak at the cost of course, your healing and your recoveries. This ability is super amazing for a stamina build though, because you still regenerate stamina while you're in Mist form, so it allows us to effectively use the Mist Cloak to just kind of hide our stamina pool, allow it to come back and regen. That's why we have the regen on this bar, and then turn and fight. Mist form is just all around fantastic. The Swifty jewels that we have, of course, stack with the movement speed buff from Mist form, so this gives us a 60% bonus movement speed Mist form on this build, assuming I had the gold jewelry. The next ability that we have is Extended Ritual. This is an absolute must-have for a Templar. So friggin' powerful. Remove 5 harmful effects from yourself immediately, and you put a circle down where an ally can synergize it for a bit of a heal, and then remove all harmful effects from themselves as well. So a super great purge for you, and a super great purge for your friends. This is a really great skill to have in especially today's PvP meta, where we see a lot of things like dot sets coming to be more prevalent, things like slowed semblance. These kind of things are going to deal a lot of damage to people who don't have access to a purge, so the Stamina Templar is super great having this very strong purge. It's going to make you very resistant to those kinds of builds. This of course pairs really well with our build because it allows us to keep very few negative effects on ourselves and allows us to really effectively use Rally. I mean, if we always had dots ticking off on us, Rally would not be enough healing, but the fact that we can keep ourselves very purged and very healthy at all times, Rally is a very effective heal just due to that. And then the final normal ability we have is Restoring Focus. This is going to be our armor buff as well as access to minor vitality and minor protection, increasing our healing received and reducing the damage we take by 8%. Very, very good skill. And it's very cheap too. We've got great recovery, so we should always have this buff up. And yeah, this is just kind of the buff skill that we have for defensive purposes. This is the one that you want to keep up when you're trying to run away in mist. And of course, you want to make sure that you have this buff up when you're doing your healing as well. And then finally, guys, for the ultimate on this build, we have got Undo. And yeah, this ultimate's crazy good. Honestly, you guys will see in the footage. I get in fights where straight up any other ult in the game would not have saved me, but Undo does because it is very strong. Very, very strong. I wouldn't say it's overpowered. I would just say that it is a great sleight of hand ultimate. It allows you to teleport back to a position that you were 4 seconds ago. Now, I don't have this ability morphed. When you get this ability morphed, I would highly recommend that you go for the morph that allows you to use it when you're stunned. And the reason I say this is because a lot of people like to try to stun you when you come out of mist form. A big thing that I say is to hold block coming out of mist, and that way you'll prevent that stun from coming unless it's an unblockable stun. But Undo, morphing it to the one that you can use in stun, is just going to be kind of your like secondary protection against getting caught coming out of your mist form. So if you get caught really bad, you'll be able to break the stun right away with the Undo and get teleported back to the old location. Now, something else that I really wanted to mention about the Psijic abilities is that they give us access to this concentrated barrier skill. When you have a Psijic ability slotted and are blocking, you gain a damage shield that absorbs 2,500 damage, and this damage shield will recharge back to full strength if you spend 10 seconds not blocking. Due to the fact that we use very varied defenses on this build, it means that this shield will recharge by itself very easily throughout the course of normal combat, and we do use a lot of blocking, and the fact that we have both Psijic skills on both bars means that no matter what bar we are on, we proc this shield while blocking. And it may not seem like a lot of damage, but if you're blocking an attack, it's likely an attack that's going to do a lot of damage to you, and shaving 2,500 uncrittable damage off of that is honestly a pretty brutal amount to take off. It gives you quite a bit of tankiness, so I've really enjoyed this passive particularly from the Psijic order skills, and I really wanted to mention it because it is kind of a big part of this build. It does really play into the anti-burst of this spec. Alright guys, and finally, let's take a look at those champion points. We're going to start in the green tree. In the tower, 26 Warlord, 6 in Sprinter, and 6 in Bashing Focus. You gotta break free, you gotta sprint, and you gotta bash. Not a huge focus on sprint here because we have a lot of well fitted on, but there you go. In the next tree, we have got 120 total points for that wind running passive. You want this passive. 2% movement speed is actually like, it's not a huge amount, but you want it. Trust me, you want it. This is a speed build. You want that 2%. And then finally, that 10% bonus magicka recovery while sprinting. Super fantastic as well. That's just going to play into our mist sustain also. So for our points here, we've got 64 Mooncalf, 49 Arcanist, and 7 in Tenacity. Focus, of course, on Mooncalf because we've got mostly stamina recovery. But don't forget about Arcanist because we do have quite a bit of magicka recovery as well, and then just a few points in Tenacity to make sure we hit that 120 mark. In the Shadow Tree, we have got 66 in Tumbling and 26 in Shadow Ward. Huge amounts of points in Tumbling here. You will be roly-poly like crazy on this build. Like I said, the whole point is to not get hit, so you want to be preemptively rolling attacks, making sure that no one hits you as often as you can. Tumbling is going to be a huge part of that, making roll cost super cheap paired with your well-fitted gear. And then, of course, we have 26 points in Shadow Ward because, like I had mentioned, you are going to be doing quite a bit of blocking on this build too. In PvP in general, especially if you're playing a medium armor or a heavy armor build, I would highly recommend that you get used to blocking certain attacks. It's just good practice. It's going to really help you out in PvP to not take that huge amount of damage while blocking the attack and not take that stun. Because if you just take the damage and you take the stun, well, then you get to spend 5k stamina breaking the stun, whereas you could have just blocked the initial attack. Anyway, so that's why we have a few points here for you guys. Taking a look at our blue tree, we have got nothing in the Apprentice. This is a glass cannon Templar. We don't even care about Blessed, yo. Let's take a look at the Atronach. We've got 120 points here, 39 physical weapon expert, and 81 at Master at Arms. So huge focus on Master at Arms here. I didn't do a ton into physical weapon expert. I know that light attacks had received a pretty big buff this patch, but I felt that Master at Arms was the way to go to really increase all of that single target damage, well, direct damage, attack damage that we have. So the important passive that we have here, of course, is Tactician. When you use Roll Dodge to dodge an attack, you will set the enemy off balance. Now this plays into our other tree, the Ritual, and this 75-point passive, increase your damage against off-balance enemies by 10%. So this is just medium armor 101. We are very roly-poly. You should be keeping a lot of opponents off balance during the course of a fight. A little fun fact that I did want to mention is that we do have the Javelin as our primary stun. However, if an opponent is off balance and you hit them with a partially charged or a fully charged heavy attack from your bow, it will actually stun them. Or your greatsword. I just said bow because it's easier to hit them at a distance, right? So that is something to keep in mind, is that the off-balance passive actually gives us access to another stun at no stamina cost, just off a partial heavy. So taking a look at the points that we have here, we've got 49 mighty, 37 piercing, and 44 precise strikes. A fairly even spread here. You do want to keep this pretty even. I decided to focus on mighty a little bit more and precise strikes just to bulk up my tooltip and, of course, bulk up that crit damage, going for that big beefy crit rush. But ultimately, I think that you want to keep these all around 40 is kind of the best bet here. Now, I did want to mention this Last Stand passive. The Last Stand passive is actually super fantastic for this build. And the reason I think that Last Stand is such a good passive for this build is because we are using the Undo Ultimate. Now, you will use the Undo Ultimate when your health drops and maybe you're low on resources and you need to teleport out of there to a safe place. Well, when that happens, your Last Stand is going to proc, so you'll get Minor Heroism. So if your health drops and you use the ultimate, you take advantage of that Minor Heroism right away, so it just pairs really well with the Psijic Undo Ultimate. Not to mention, we are squishy, so if you find yourself dropping below 20% HP, this ult gain is going to be fantastic for you as well. Taking a look at our red tree, we have got 44 Ironclad, 60 in Resistant, 15, and 15 for Spell Shield, Medium Armor, Focus. A lot in Resistant here to just kind of bulk up the missing crit resist that we had. 44 Ironclad, a little bit on the lower side. You could put more points here and take out of Spell and Medium Armor, Focus if you want, but I decided to just bulk these up because I wanted to go for a more rounded resistant spec as opposed to just dumping kind of everything into Ironclad like I normally do. And honestly, I've been liking this. I feel about the same amount of tanky, so I don't know what to say. In this tree, we've got 32, 32, and 9, so Hardy Elemental Defender to reduce the incoming magical and physical damage that we take with these guys. Thick Skin is going to reduce the incoming damage over time that we take. I actually put a few points in here on the Templar simply because there's quite a few abilities like Radiant Destruction that count as damage over time effects, so this is going to reduce the damage that those things do. And the reason I kind of picked Radiant Destruction is because that's a particularly deadly skill to get hit by when you're in Mist form, so this is going to play into that. Taking a look at the Lord tree, we have got 43 in quick recovery, increase the amount of healing we receive by 10%. Yep, that's where our healing's coming from, pretty much just here, and rally. So there you go, guys. That is the champion points. Alright guys, so let's do some PvP commentary. So to start off here, we have a little bit of solo PvP for you guys. And yeah, this is a huge movement speed based build, and you guys will see it in the footage. A big part of playing this build effectively is not playing it like heavy armor, so don't be tempted to just sit there and tank out damage. Keep in mind that this footage represents what the build will look like when you play it. So there you go. Let's jump into it. So as you can see here, we have engaged with a couple Sorks here. The first thing that I did is I just quickly pulled towards these rocks to separate them because I didn't want to engage with these guys both beating on me at the same time. As you can see, they've got both curses going off on me, and if both curses pop at the same time, that could be a potentially lethal amount of damage if these guys hit really hard. So I'm going to have to be careful to make sure to keep that purged, and of course to jump into my Mist form when the curse is about to explode. there you can see we get just in time into the curse there. Almost cutting it a little late on the regen tick. But anyway, as you can see here, I'm just going to try to kite these guys out. A big part of this build is, of course, setting my kills, setting my combo, and I'm going to have to make sure that I keep these guys separated, I keep them running, and I keep them on the move, and that's just going to allow me to, like you can see, split them with a set of rocks like that, catch one guy by himself, huge Dawnbreaker combo because his shields are down, and we managed to finish him off there. Now, unfortunately, another DC player comes here to engage, and it is a Templar. He quickly reses the Sork that I had taken down there. I throw a quick stun into him, but I'm like, nope, really low on resources. Here you can see I kind of get caught super low resource, not really anticipating that I would get hit by the snare there, but I do manage to just wait for one tick, roll dodge out of there into mist form, and just go right back to kiting behind these rocks and let my regen do the work while I just keep these guys split up. I catch this guy with his shields down yet again. Oh no. And another Dawnbreaker combo to bring him down. And I believe he respawns after that, so we don't, there you go, so we don't have to worry about him anymore. So now that I have kind of separated these guys really well, actually, the one Sork doesn't even know where I am. I'm just beating on this Templar, working her, just putting the combos into her, waiting until the other Sork engages. There is the crystal frags. I go for a dodge roll right after the frags hit me. I couldn't really dodge the first frags because hashtag no miats. Get a good stun on this guy here, but I don't manage to really capitalize on it afterwards as I just have a lot of pressure on me here and my HP is pretty low. Now, something that you saw me do when I crit rushed into that guy was I held block while I did my crit rush. This is something I would highly recommend you guys do if you play a build like this, and it's just because we are fairly squishy. You can hold block while you use a gap closer. There you see that super awesome juke with the Psijic ultimate just to throw them off, get a good stun off on the Templar. Ultimately, though, it doesn't really buy me the positioning I need to capitalize on a good combo on these guys. That being said, though, I managed to catch the Sork here with his shield. Oh, he had his shield up. Almost caught him. Little bit of pepper into him there. Little bit of pepper. Still playing on these rocks, though. The big advantage here, of course, is that the Templar is going to be fairly slow. Get a great stun off on the Sork. He goes to channel a frags on me. Maybe he went for the wrong skill there. Unfortunately, though, that will cost him the fight, and we managed to quickly burst him down in our combo there with Power of the Light and Poison Injection. So now we are left to fight the last target here, and it is a tankier Templar. And this guy counters us really hard. We're just going to actively keep him dotted up. There you see we go for a huge Dawnbreaker combo. Don't actually manage to capitalize on the kill, though. He responds real quickly to it. But anyway, we keep this guy dotted up, force him to continue to purge our negative effects. We don't want to stop putting them on him until he gets lower HP. Here you can see we get him to really low HP. He's just spamming the heals, his Earthgore procs, and I'm like, nope, we're hammering down. We're bringing this guy down, and that is the end of that fight, and we managed to take the win. That, personally, was a very difficult fight for me. It was kind of on the edge, so I really hope you guys enjoyed that one. Anyway, it's not over. We ride a little bit up the field here, and we come into a couple more DC players here. We catch this guy off his horse, go for the crit rush combo right away. He's a little bit chunkier. We don't actually manage to put huge damage into him with the initial attack. That being said, though, he is not very quick to heal himself. So we just avoid the Nightblade damage by using a mix of roll dodge and mist form, holding block in our crit rush yet again there. We just want to make sure to put as many roll cancels and as many blocks on our build as we can. There you see the Psijic shield will pop up every time I go for a hold block or a block cancel. Get a huge heavy attack off on him here as he goes for the ambush. Follow it up with that Dawnbreaker, and he drops after the Executioner. Alright guys, so this next clip here, we have got something, well, some more solo PvP, but I wanted to show you guys Ghost in a keep. This is Ghost's home terrain, and honestly, when you learn to play this build right, you will feel pretty much unkillable when you play in a keep properly. And this is the clip here that we're going to show you guys how to tank 10 players in a keep. Honestly, this build can do it. A big criticism that I hear from people who look at builds like this is, that build's crap. There's no way you'd survive fighting 5 players or 10 players or whatever. And it's like, yeah, well, if I just stood still for everybody, sure, there's no way I'd survive. But if you don't stand still for everyone, you can definitely fight 10 players on a build like this. So as you can see here, we are using the keep. We're using the mist form and the movement speed to just really play a good positioning game on these guys here. Keep this group spread up. The second that these guys all attack me at the same time, I'm going to die. So my intention here is to continue movement, never hold still. There you see a really nice Psijic portal. None of them notice me. I still unfortunately get caught by the time stop, but even though I get caught by the stun, it catches them all off guard. None of them really notice where I've teleported, and I'm still able to make it out of there relatively unscathed. So here I decide to go for a drop down here. A lot of negative effects on me, so I want to make sure to purge them. There I go for the first purge, and I don't get all of them. Second purge there to make sure we get them all. And here you can see with a little bit of sprinting, right back up, enough magicka to go right back into our mist. But we decide to jump back down here and go offensive on this guy. Just put a little bit of pepper into him. A big part of this build is hit and run, so you're going to be doing a lot of movement, and when that opportunity arises, you want to make sure you try to capitalize on it. But don't overcommit if you feel like you're going to get yourself killed. You know, it's okay to back up and try again. So as you can see here, we're just going to keep moving around these guys. Not really focusing a target here. I'm just kind of gauging the group, looking for the target that will be easiest for me to kill, essentially. I go for another one of those teleports there. I managed to juke one of the Sorks really well with it. The other Sork follows me up the staircase, and end up just dropping right back down here again anyway. As you can see, though, he is there behind me. We crit rush into this guy, and knowing that these guys are all still looking for me, I decide to just try to split away a little bit here. I take a really heavy combo. There you see the Nightblade attack as well hits me. I manage to barely survive it, and I get two pretty much no duration rally heals. You see them coming in at like 6k crits, so rally definitely saving my bacon there, even though the crits weren't that huge. But a big part I wanted to note about that particular piece of fight right there was that I held block as I was jumping off the edge. If I had not held block, I would have taken too much damage and not been able to heal away enough and survive the attack. As you can see there, that guy goes for his Destro ult. I stun him outside of his ult, quickly get the kill on him, and just come back into here. A little bit of a risky kill, but risk it for the biscuit. You guys know. We see this guy again, and he'd just gotten res, so I couldn't put a little bit more damage into him. But once I noticed the blue players here starting to put a lot of pressure onto me again, I decide to kite right back up top here, go for off the edge, and I hold block as I drop, so I drop really close to the edge, and then use the Psijic teleport to teleport back after we capitalize on finishing that guy off yet again. And we're just going to jump off the edge here and go for another combo, and exactly what I said happens here. They all hit me at the same time, and that is a GG. A little bit slow on the CC break there myself. I think if we'd been a little quicker, we maybe could have kept this fight going. Anyhow, hope you guys enjoyed that footage. Let's move on to the next clip. Okay, so this clip here, we are at a resource, and yeah, we're just going to be playing that resource game, trying to cap this blue resource. Here comes a enemy Templar. Comes in on us, and he's going to start jabbing at us. Jabs is not a very effective move to use against this spec. Yeah, this guy's jabs honestly won't really hit me as long as I kite him out, and that is exactly what we want, is to use our speed to avoid that kind of melee distance damage that he's using. As you can see here, though, we're a little bit low on stam, and I don't want to get caught by a nasty negate, so I decide to just see if this guy will come up top with me and duke it out where I don't have to eat those NPC attacks. So I just do a little bit of a retreat up here, and he actually ends up following me this time. So as he comes in for the crit rush, I go into my combo there, and when he goes for his jabs, I wait for it, go for the stun, and I manage to put a lot of damage into him. He tries to escape off the side, but I keep the pressure on him and manage to take him down there. And another blue player comes in on the other side here. I stun him at first, dot him up, go for the second stun after his immunity's down, and there you see just the huge Poddle combo brings him down, and that guy kind of just explodes. So I continue to put a little bit of work into the NPCs here as I see some more blue players heading this way. This guy here, he goes for his surge. He does not put up a damage shield. Huge mistake. He doesn't even survive to, like, I don't even think I landed the crit rush. I think he just died from the accessory burst moves. Anyway, we got one more player that's going to come up here and try to take this resource from us. Put a little bit of pepper into him there. We just play a little bit of distance here. And there you see big javelin stun, Dawnbreaker. Nice combo there with the Poddle, just kind of baiting him into position using the terrain. And there you see we managed to kill off almost the last NPC. And this is where a lot of DC show up, and I believe I just end up running away or something. Not much I can do here. Alright guys, and for the last clip here, we've got a 2vx for you featuring the mighty Jobo kill on his Nightblade, Sasuke Uchiha. If you guys don't know, Jordan is my best friend actually in real life, and he recently started playing ESO about a year ago with me, and I've been absolutely loving playing this game with him. Anyhow, this is a special clip, I think, for me. I'm sorry if I don't commentate it super well, but this is a special clip for me because I've been waiting a really long time on my Templar to rank up from rank 40 to rank 41. If you guys don't know, rank 41 is the general rank, and it's the first rank that you actually get a star at. And before that, you don't have access to any rank with stars in them. So this was kind of a big deal for me because it signifies, well, essentially the halfway point up to rank 50 in this game, because statistically that is what it is. But not just that, but star is kind of just a symbol, I think, of I've been playing ESO a long time, and I wanted to wait for kind of a special moment to hit the star on my Templar. So I have this fight for you guys here, and this is a special fight for, well, a pretty special reason, and I hope you guys enjoy it. And it is, of course, featuring my best friend Jordan, and I'm so glad that I waited all that time for this moment so that I could bring you guys this little piece of footage here. But anyway, let's take a look at this fight. As you can see here, the first part of this fight, not a lot of action going on. Most of this is just kind of movement and positioning, and that's because this is kind of how you play Ghost, of course, is you want to make sure you move into a place where you can drop on your opponent, hit them with some hard damage, and easily avoid any incoming damage so they can't kind of turn it on you. So as you can see here, we pulled these guys out of this siege, and we've pulled them into the rocks here where we have terrain to work with. Jordan, of course, has access to stealth, which is going to make it really easy for us to put some serious pepper into these guys. As you can see, we catch this guy by himself, just the big javelin into the Dawnbreaker, drop this guy. There's the skill point, and that is that super awesome moment where I got my rank 41 with my best friend. Big shout out to Jordan, guys. Really special moment for me, and I was super glad that he was there for it. But anyway, guys, I'm going to let you watch the rest of this as we do our finishing outros here. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you did, feel free to hit that like and subscribe button. I play live on Twitch, so if you guys want to see this gameplay live, feel free to swing by my Twitch. Link, of course, is in the description. And finally, guys, we are sponsored by What the Fast, a VPN for gamers. If you guys get crap ping to your favorite games and you maybe want to try a VPN out to see if a VPN will make your ping better, What the Fast is free to try from the description in the link below. It's a local Canadian company. I've been using it for half a year now, and it's been absolutely fantastic for ESO. Thank you guys for watching. Have a fantastic night, and I'll see you next time.